What's up guys, MCMA here. In today's video I am going to be breaking down this weekend's fight night, headlined by Steve Garcia and David Onama, as well as giving my predictions for each fight. This is a really bad fight night, even for like Apex standards, I'm going to be honest. There's no way that there's no reason that a number 12 versus 13 matchup at featherweight should be headlining any fight night, to be honest, especially one like this. I mean, this is honestly, the main event is a good fight, but there's just like neither one of these dudes has like any hype around them. Even though we'll get into this later, but I do think that there probably should be more eyes on this fight. But like, there's no hype around this matchup. The card's not very deep. I mean, there's only like two ranked men's fights, I think, and one ranked women's fight. I mean, overall, it's really poor card, and I hope that this is something that, I mean, we've been saying this for years that the UFC needs to step it up with the Apex cards. At least, if you're not going to get rid of the Apex, at least make the cards better. But that doesn't seem to be something that's going to happen anytime soon. So let's just get right into it. First fight of the night, we have got a women's strawweight bout between Talita Alankar and Ariane Carnelosi. I'm going to be totally honest, I don't know anything about either one of these two. I've never watched their fights, and therefore I'm going to be using a pretty proven method for picking women's fights, which is you pick the more masculine looking one. And here, that is clearly Ariane Carnelosi. She's pretty jacked, so maybe she's actually kind of nice. So I'm going to be picking her by decision. That's the second part. You always pick them by decision. All right, on to the next fight. This is honestly a decently interesting matchup. We've got Phil Rowe versus Seokyeon Ko. Ko is coming off of a pretty impressive win over Oban Elliott. Elliott, I think this was Ko's first, or I think it was Ko's first UFC fight. And Elliott was on a decent little roll, and I think he was pretty heavily favored in that one. And Ko just picked him apart. He honestly dominated him in that fight. And Phil Rowe, he's been a mainstay in the welterweight division for a while, but I think that Ko is going to beat him pretty easily here. I think he's a guy that's got a decent amount of potential, and especially facing a kind of like mid-tier fighter in Phil Rowe, I don't think that he will struggle too much, so I'm going to be picking him by decision here. All right, next fight, we have got Elise Ardalan versus Montserrat Ruiz, another unranked women's strawweight fight. I mean, the same thing goes for this one. I don't know anything about either one of them, so I'm going to be picking Ardalan by decision since she looks a little tougher in her picture. All right, on to the next. We have got number 3 ranked women's bantamweight Ketlin Vieira versus number 4 ranked Norma Dumont. I mean, if this doesn't tell you everything you need to know about the state of the women's bantamweight division, then I don't know what else you need to be told, because this is a top 5 matchup. Potential number 1 contender fight. If Dumont wins, she would probably be next in line for a title shot after Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. And I mean, this is on the prelims of an Apex fight night. Like, that's insane to me. Regardless of that, though, I am somewhat interested to see how this one plays out. Vieira fought earlier this year. I think she beat Macy Chiasson. I'm pretty sure that's who it was. And Dumont hasn't fought since UFC Noche last year, when she beat the absolute shit out of Irene Aldana and just absolutely split her face open. So I'm not sure why she's had such a long layoff, since I don't know if she's dealing with like injuries or something. But good to see her get back in there, and hopefully she can put on another super impressive performance like that and cement herself as the number 1 contender in the women's bantamweight division. All right, next up we have got Dante Johnson making his UFC debut against Cedricus Dumas. This is a pretty easy pick. I'm going to be picking Dante Johnson by first round KO. Cedricus Dumas is a absolute joke. He is a pathetic excuse for a UFC fighter. I'm sure at some point during this training camp, I honestly don't know if this motherfucker even trains, but like, I'm sure he's gotten arrested or gotten into some sort of legal trouble in the past couple months, since he gets arrested like every fucking month at this point. He might even have an ankle monitor on during this fight. But Dante Johnson should steamroll him. I mean, Cedricus Dumas is a horrible fighter. I mean, I think the only reason that they're keeping him around at this point is just to serve as a punching bag for guys like Dante Johnson that are coming into the UFC. So I'm going to be going with Dante by first round knockout here. All right, next up we have got Timmy Kwamba versus Chang Ho Lee. I don't know much about Kwamba, but Chang Ho Lee is a pretty solid prospect at bantamweight. He absolutely steamrolled. I think it was Cortavius Romeus in his last fight. And I mean, he's a tough guy. He fights super hard. He's one of those guys who kind of fights like he has rabies, like kind of like a Diego Lopez archetype, maybe. And I think you put a guy like him against low-level bantamweight, like Timmy Kwamba, he's going to steamroll him. So I'm going to be picking Chang Ho Lee by first-round knockout. All right, next up, last fight on the prelims, we have got Billy Elikana versus Kevin Christian. Elikana coming off of that awful fight against Ibo Aslan earlier this year, one of the worst fights I've ever seen. I'm kind of surprised he's sticking around at light heavyweight because he made his debut on, I think it was UFC 311 this year, and he was a super short notice replacement, and he fought Bogdan Guskov, who's a ranked light heavyweight. And I mean, he was pretty clearly undersized in that fight. And like, I still think that he's a guy who probably fits best at middleweight, but it seems like he's going to ride it out at light heavyweight. But I think very little of Billy Elikana. He hasn't really shown too much in his first UFC fights. Kevin Christian, this dude's fucking huge. Holy shit. 6'7", 80-inch reach. He's got a record of 1-0, so that leads me to believe that he was probably a kickboxer given his huge frame. But obviously fairly new to MMA. Oh wait, no, he's actually not 1-0. They have it wrong. He's actually 9-2. He won his Contender Series fight by armbar. He must have been doing some other combat sport because he doesn't have too many MMA fights, but because of, I don't think that Billy Elikana is very good, and this dude Kevin Christian's got a huge frame, clearly seems to be a natural light heavyweight. I'm gonna pick him by decision. I mean, I could maybe see a finish, but Elikana is decently tough, like he was. Actually, I don't know about decently tough. He kind of gave up when he fought Bogdan Guskov, but that was on very short notice against a tough opponent. So I won't give him too much shit for that one, but I am going to pick Kevin Christian in this one. All right, on to the first fight of the main card. We have got Alan Nascimento versus Cody Durden. Nascimento was supposed to be fighting Rafael Estevam, but Estevam pulled out. I don't know why he pulled out, but if I had to guess, his weight cut was not going too well since he's missed weight twice in 3 fights in the UFC, and Durden is going to be the short notice replacement. Nascimento's a guy who I think is pretty slept on in the flyweight division. He's currently on a 3-fight win streak. His last one came over Jeff Filio earlier this year, and he did have a super long layoff. I think he didn't fight for like 2 years or something between like 2023 and 2025, but he's on a 3-fight win streak, and even he could arguably be on a 4-fight win streak since his fight against Tagir Ulanbekov was super close, and you could have definitely scored that one for Nascimento. And Cody Durden, it's not looking great for him. He's coming off back-to-back pretty brutal losses to Jose Ochoa and Joshua Van. I mean, to be fair, those are two, like, especially Van. Van's obviously elite. And Ochoa's a pretty good fighter, but I just don't think Durden's very good. Like, he's not a good striker at all. He's a pretty middling grappler. And Nascimento's a guy who's got pretty strong grappling. So I think that he should win this one pretty easily. I'm going to pick him by decision here, but I would not be shocked if he was able to get a finish. All right, next up we have got Charles Radke versus Daniel Frunza. Very low-level fight at welterweight, but should be a pretty entertaining fight since these dudes both love to scrap. I am going to be picking Radke here since I think he's slightly better than Frenza. I mean, Frenza lost to fucking Reese McKee in his last fight. Like, I don't even know how that's possible. But should be a good scrapple at last since these guys both like to throw down, and I am going to be picking Radke by a first round knockout. All right, next up we have got a featherweight bout between Isaac Dolgarian and Yadier Del Valle. Del Valle is pretty solid. I think he's only got one fight in the UFC, but he seems to have some pretty decent potential. And I mean, Dolgarian is not like some killer or anything in the unranked featherweight pool. So I think Del Valle should be able to win this one. I believe he's an underdog too, so this is probably one of the better bets that you could make on this card since I think the odds are pretty good on this one, and I'm going to be picking Del Valle by decision here. All right, next up we have got Jeremiah Wells versus Themba Gorimbo. Gorimbo has not fought since getting sparked out by Vicente Luque in like 30 seconds at the end of last year. Wells, I don't remember who his last opponent was, but Gorimbo, I mean, these guys both aren't very good, to be honest. I mean, Gorimbo, I guess he sort of had some momentum going into that Luque fight, but, I mean, getting beat up that bad by washed-up Vicente Luque kind of just tells us everything that we need to know about Gorimbo. Like, he's not a guy who's going to ever be, like, a top 15 level fighter, I don't think, and Wells is just, I mean, it's the same thing with him. So, I am going to go with Gorimbo by decision, but this is not a fight that I find to be particularly captivating or anything. So, all right, on to the co-main event. We have got number 6 ranked heavyweight Waldo Cortez Acosta versus number 9 ranked Ante Dializa. This is a pretty interesting matchup. Dializa, obviously, he's only got one fight in the UFC. Came over from, I actually don't remember where he came over from, but he looked amazing in his debut against Marcin Tybura. Absolutely walked him down. Knocked him out in the first round. He looks like a pretty competent heavyweight. His striking looked really good. He's, as you can see here, he's not fat as shit, which is always a good sign. And I think that he's a guy who could probably be top 5 in the division for a decent little while. And Waldo, I mean, this dude Waldo Cortez Acosta is like a fucking cockroach, man. Like, there's nothing that he's particularly good at except for having an amazing chin. But he just like has somehow found a way to like sneak his way up to number 6 in the division, and he's always going to be a guy who will be a tough fight. So I am going to be picking Dializa here. I think the fact that this fight is 3 rounds really favors him, since Waldo's a guy who likes to mix in the grappling a lot. I think he definitely will look to mix in the grappling in this fight. I was kind of surprised that they didn't make this one the main event over Steve Garcia and David Onama, since I guess you could see this as an opportunity to kind of build up Ante Dializa, since he's one of the few fighters at heavyweight who has some potential. But I do think that a 5-rounder would favor Waldo, and I don't know if the UFC wants Waldo to win, so maybe that could be part of it. But my official pick is going to be Dializa by decision. As I was saying earlier, Waldo's got a crazy chin on him. I mean, he ate some bombs from Sergey Pavlovich in his last fight. And, I mean, if Pavlovich isn't knocking him out, I don't know who is. So I am going to pick Dializa by decision. I think he's just going to outstrike him on the feet. And while I do think Waldo is definitely going to mix in the grappling and he will probably land some takedowns, I don't think it's going to be significant enough to outweigh the striking advantage for Dializa. All right, on to the main event of the evening. We have got number 12 ranked featherweight contender Steve Garcia taking on number 13 ranked David Onama. I think that Steve Garcia should win this fight pretty easily. I mentioned Steve Garcia in my most underrated fighters in the UFC video, and I think that's still accurate. He's on a crazy run. Like, he's on, I believe, a 6-fight win streak with 5 of those wins coming by knockout. And his last win was a pretty dominant decision over Calvin Kattar. I know Calvin Kattar is a shell of his former self, but Steve Garcia is very good, and I think he's very slept on. As for David Onama, he's throughout his career, he's generally been a very exciting fighter. He's had a lot of bangers, like his fight against Nate Landwehr was sick. His fight against Roberto Romero was pretty sick, but his last performance really didn't inspire me too much. Kind of scraped past Giga Chikadze. You could honestly argue that Chikadze won the fight, and I kind of thought that he did, since Onama's takedowns didn't really lead to anything on the ground. And I think in this one, Steve Garcia is going to have a pretty clear advantage in the striking department, especially power-wise. And I don't think that Onama's really going to be able to do anything to keep Steve Garcia off of him. So I think Steve Garcia is just going to walk him down. Onama might land a couple takedowns, but I don't think he's that good of a grappler. And I see Steve Garcia knocking him out fairly early in this one. So my official prediction here is going to be Steve Garcia by round 2 knockout. And hopefully this will get some eyes on Steve Garcia, since I think he's got some decent potential as a contender in the featherweight division. All right, there is my breakdown and picks for UFC Fight Night Garcia versus Onama. If you guys agree or disagree with any of my picks, just let me know in the comments. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and thank you for watching.